That's it. Game over, man. Yeah, everywhere you turn, whether it's social media or mainstream media, the newspaper, they all say housing recession is coming. Yeah, listen, I'm not saying that I disagree with that per se, but I do disagree with possibly the timeline in which they're discussing. So, my name is Nancy from Nancy Chu Homes, and today I'm here to talk to you about the timeline for the housing recession. Oh, and by the way, if you get a chance, pause the video, scroll down, and let us know when you think the housing recession is coming. And then once you've done that, come back to me. I think a lot of times when people talk about housing recession, it's really because they're almost praying for it. Like I would tell you, 40% of Americans right now are praying for a housing recession because they believe that a housing recession will increase affordability for them. Because right now they're feeling like they can't afford to buy a house. But there's lots of different things that kind of have to fall in place for there to be a housing recession. And let's talk about those things. So in this video, I'm going to talk about 3 things that really kind of need to happen in order for us to have a recession and therefore sort of bring that affordability back. But stay tuned to the end because I think we're going to talk a little bit about why we think that may or may not be a bad thing. So don't forget, house prices are basically directly related to supply and demand. So if we don't have enough houses to go around for all the people that are looking for homes, then it becomes difficult because the homes that do exist are going to be bid up. And that is kind of what we're seeing. You know, we have been seeing about a 6% year-over-year increase in house price in our market area. I was going to say nationally, house prices are, probably up by about 2.5% right now. So, unfortunately, we're not near that affordability mark. So if inventory is your biggest challenge, then the truth is we just need more inventory. We need more houses to change hands in order to start to sort of push that price point down. If everyone has enough houses to choose from, they won't necessarily bid high the ones that do exist right now, which is what we're seeing in the market. So then what are the 3 things that need to happen in order to increase our supply to meet the demand? Okay, I'm going to give them to you. Number 1, the silver tsunami. That's going to be when folks, particularly boomers who are ready to sell their homes, decide to all put their homes on the market. That would be a great way for us to increase the inventory. Number 2, new construction building. That would be phenomenal. New construction building. If we were able to increase the amount of building that we see, then we'd provide more houses for people looking for them, right? And of course, number 3 would be an influx of foreclosures, right? That's one thing that you've seen people talk about, hey, there's going to be an influx of foreclosures, and so therefore we're going to see all these houses hit the market. Then that happened with the recession in 2008, yada, yada, yada. So yes, we'll talk about that too. So to start off, let's talk about the possibility of that silver tsunami, which is, boomers finally deciding to sell their homes. I'm going to give you some stats that I thought was really interesting. So 90% of all houses that are owned right now by households, that household's average age is above 40 years old. So 74% of housing owned by households is held by folks over 50 years old, and 56% of that housing is actually owned by households over 60 years old. The interesting thing is that a lot of these folks, which we have expected at some point to make their retirement, head over to Florida, Arizona, all these, the Carolinas, these places where they often retire to. So I had expected an extraordinary number of people to sell their homes in order to make the move. Well, that isn't actually what's happened. One of the things that's happened is that most of these folks either own their houses outright already, or they have such low interest rates on their homes, 2.75%, 3%, anything that's sort of sub 4% category. Most of them are kind of like, I think I'm just going to hold on to my house. I can't tell you the number of folks that we've seen who've opted to hold on to their homes instead of selling them, because honestly, many of them don't need to. They've already had their monies that they took out in their homes to purchase or rent the home that they want to go to for retirement. And a bunch of them are like, you know what? I'm just going to hold on to this house. I'm going to rent it out. And because, they own the house outright, they're just making cash flow on these homes. And another thing that I've seen is they say, you know what, I'm just going to hold out. I'm going to hold on to this property just in case. In the meantime, it's cash flowing for me. And on the off chance that my son or daughter or, whoever, my niece, my nephew, decides to come back to where we live and they decide they want a home, then I'll either be able to rent it out to them or I'm just going to leave it to them so that they have this property after I move on. And that's something that we've seen quite a bit of. And as young people who are desperately looking for homes, as they're having a hard time, they're turning to family members that are older and saying, hey, you don't want to sell your house to me, do you? And a lot of people are doing that because they're finding it easier than the process of regular home buying. Another thing that we're seeing with the boomers is that many of them are also not even really moving and choosing to age in place in the homes that they have right now. And that's partially because, guess what? They've discovered that they've got family members nearby, they've got kids and grandkids, and they want to stay near where their grandchildren are, at least, during the younger years of the grandkids. So you're seeing a lot of folks just choose to age in place because ultimately they want to be near family. Okay, so the silver tsunami isn't coming, so how do we get more inventory? Let's look at number 2. How about new construction? Okay, if you're in an area where there's a lot of new construction, that's phenomenal. You're able to add new construction to your repertoire every year. For some of us that are in areas that have less land development, new construction is not coming in large enough numbers in order to alleviate our inventory issues. Although overall, we have seen about 2.5% increase in inventory in the United States. And these are, of course, including that new construction. We're talking about new permit applications that are being filed and accepted. And in places where they don't require permits, places with no zoning, then we're talking about foundations dug. Now, notice something. That's considered new inventory. It's so funny because in my mind, new inventory is a house that's ready to move into, because that alleviates my inventory problem right now. Hey, we got an inventory problem. Hey, look, there's a new house being built and they just finished it. That's not to me the same thing as, hey, we just applied for these permits and haven't even broken ground. Or, hey, we put in the foundation. To me, that's still inventory that really comes up 5 months from now, 6 months from now, 8 months from now, depending on when they finish that project. So I kind of think that's a weird definition of inventory, when inventory that they're counting as, adding to our inventory now, but with permits and foundations dug, that's really inventory that's further down the line. One of the challenges that we're seeing is that, with the interest rates the way that they are, builders are just as affected by these rates as consumers are. And so what you're seeing is a bit of a slowdown on the new permits being filed and the new foundations being dug, mainly because it becomes expensive for builders to build. So every time the interest rates go up, or if we have an actual recession, builders stop building. We know that happened. We know that happened because when the recession happened, which really started in 2005, right? And then, came home to roost in 2008. From 2008 to 2012, builders didn't build because credit channels really tightened up and they didn't really have enough money to do it. And they weren't really sure that if they built inventory, if people would buy it. Did they have enough money to buy it? Was there enough margin for them to do it? So this is kind of a self-perpetuating process in the sense that, the higher the interest rates go, or if we move towards a recession, builders stop building. So they can't really be counted upon to create inventory today for the challenges that we have regarding supply and demand now. So the builders are failing us on our inventory issues. So what's our third possible source of inventory? Well, foreclosures, right? That's something that we keep coming back to. There's going to be foreclosures. You see this all over the place. Foreclosures are coming. The foreclosure rate is up. Well, actually, sure, it actually is. But I'm going to show you guys a chart so that you understand a little bit more about it. But in the meantime, the foreclosure market is actually very difficult right now because a lot of homes aren't actually hitting, even if you have sellers that are in distress or homeowners in distress, A lot of these houses never really make it to foreclosure because the vast majority of people have so much equity in their homes that there's no need for them to wait till the bank to take it from them. They can actually turn around and sell their house and walk away with all the equity that they've built in their homes over however long they've owned them. Listen, in my market area, which is northern New Jersey, we've had home prices increase by 40, 50% in some places, and depending on the original condition of the home compared to this condition now. And that's so much equity that people have built that they're literally saying, hey, I bought this house 2 years ago. I bought it for, $285. I've done some really nice work to it. How much can I sell it for today? And it hits the market at $425. So they've made an extraordinary amount of money in equity in their homes just in the last 2 years. So for a lot of folks, because they've grown so much equity, foreclosure isn't really a thing because they can just turn around and sell the home and take all this money that they've grown with their house just with appreciation over time. So just to give you a little perspective, as of this year, okay, so it is the end of April. As of the end of April, we have at this snapshot in time about 1.5 million units for sale in the United States. Now, you have to understand that the first year of the housing crash, which was 2008, that year foreclosures were intense, and that deposited 3 million homes through foreclosure into the system. Okay, 3 million homes. Now, I was going to say, if that were to happen, and let's put all the other stuff aside, but like suddenly tomorrow we woke up and 3 million houses, hit the market through foreclosure, that sounds phenomenal, except for the fact that you have to remember that from 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, for 6 years, we didn't build any housing at all. And our population alone requires about 1 million new units added a year just to keep up with basic population needs, right? For basic household formations. So essentially, even if they dumped 3 million right now into our market, there's a pretty strong likelihood that a lot of those homes would be sold very quickly. Because one thing I do know is there are a ridiculous number of buyers who are sitting on the sidelines, desperate to purchase a home, but who've been waiting because they don't see any inventory to come out and look at. So like I said, if they suddenly dump 3 million units, I think we'd have a field day. I think buyers would be out here going, yeah, let me get that house, right? And the real question is, right? Because like I said, from the very beginning, we've been talking about how people keep screaming that foreclosure is coming. These foreclosures are coming, that the recession is coming. Well, I'm not saying, like I said before, I'm not saying the recession isn't coming. I just don't think it's coming the way that you think it is. So here's a chart, have a look. So as you can see, this is the U.S. properties, foreclosure filings, right? So properties with foreclosure filings. And as you can see in 2005, which by the way, in 2005, there were already signs of duress that the financial markets were starting to buzz, that they knew that there was something going on, that, this expanded credit was causing a problem, and that we were starting to see some cracks in the system, some weaknesses. And even with 2005 and sort of people ringing the bell, you had a lot of folks who didn't really listen, and it actually took another 3 years before you saw the system actually finally break. And so I was thinking, if we're seeing all the signs of recession now, the recession isn't necessarily, if it comes, is not necessarily going to be something that happens overnight, which means that we're looking at 2-3 years potentially of a build up to a recession, which gives the Fed, the government, etc., a lot, the financial markets, a lot of time, right, to, shall we say, address the problem before it gets very, very bad. So I guess what I'm saying is, even if there is a significant recession coming, I think this time we've got our eyes on it a little bit better compared to how we were just blindsided a little bit in 2008. And I think that there are steps in place that we can do to ensure that this challenge doesn't affect Americans the way that it did last time. All right, guys, I just wanted to share this information with you. And if you get a chance, yeah, let's go ring the bell. Recession is coming. Recession is coming. Like in 2008, maybe, if we can't fix it. Thanks for sticking it out with me, and I'll talk to you guys next week.